Faces of Abortion is the only television program of its kind that shows the powerful, real-life stories of women, men, and families who have suffered the devastation of abortion. Faces of Abortion touches hearts and changes lives in over 125 nations. Faces of Abortion is a program that will help you with healing from the heart and hope for the future. You will be given practical steps for healing in your life and help to end the suffering of abortion.
So it just overwhelmed me. And I thought the only way to escape the pain was to take my life.
I had a fear that I wouldn't be able to have my own children.
It brings heartache. It brings hurt.
And I knew they were tearing my baby apart.
I remember the cold feeling of the room.
I remember laying there and I just said to myself that I will never forgive myself for what I'm doing.
I believe that my life was spared that night just so that I could be here right now and say abortion hurts women.
Welcome to Faces of Abortion. I'm your host, Cindy Collins, and again today I am with Alan Parker, who is president of the Justice Foundation, and Clayton Trotter, who is general counsel of the Justice Foundation. It is going to be a great show today.
It's going to be powerful testimony. We're going to hear from Kelly about the truth of her abortion in a way most people have never heard of, and we're going to hear from Pastor Alan Cook, who is Kelly's pastor, about the role of the church in forgiveness and what pastors can do about this incredibly important issue of abortion.
Yes, Alan, I know Kelly had some very serious words to say about how abortion had affected her, and also some encouragement on how the Lord used her pastor to bring healing into her life. Right now, let's go ahead and hear Kelly's story in her own words.
Hi, my name is Kelly Roy, and I'm the New Hampshire State Leader for Operation Outcry, and this is my story. 7 years ago, I found out that I was pregnant for the second time. I was very afraid and didn't know what to do, very ashamed, and under great hesitation, I made an appointment with an abortion facility. I didn't want to do it. I remember crying and pleading with the Lord not to change the situation that I was in, because I didn't want to go through with it. I went to the appointment not by myself. They brought me through counseling and told me things about my body that I already knew. They told me that I was, the baby was a blob of tissue, and they tested me to find out that make sure that I was at least 8 weeks pregnant, and found out that I was 9.5 to 10 weeks pregnant at the time. They did blood tests and signed papers, and I remember going into this room and sitting there and being in, you get dressed in the waiting room and praying and crying and asking God to help me. And all of a sudden I just completely shut down and didn't feel anything. They had told me before that the procedure would be mild cramping and no problem, be over very quickly. I laid on the table sobbing. It was very painful, and remembering that I wanted to get out of there. When it was over, they brought me to the recovery room and gave me cookies and soda and sent me home with a prescription. 2 days later, I was cramping severely. I was by myself at home, and I went into the bathroom and felt as though I had passed something, and I looked down, and in my hand was my baby. And I remember her being small and translucent. I remember seeing where her eyes were forming. I remember seeing hands and feet, and I was horrified. I can't even begin to express what I had gone through and what I had felt. I immediately dropped her because I was in shock, and ran to the phone and called the abortion facility. And all the woman had to say to me was, "That's too bad," and she hung up on me. And I went into a state of not feeling anything. It was almost like I was a zombie. I walked around I stopped eating. I dropped out of college. I was really only living at that point to take care of my first child, who was young at the time. I began to get sick and develop stomach problems and did not realize that it was connected to this pain and what I had gone through. It wasn't until I sat down with my parents and we began to pray that I realized this is what it was. And I couldn't say anything but to sob, almost uncontrollably for a very long time. That was the point where I began recovery, was admitting that abortion had hurt me and asking God to forgive me and to go through the walk of repentance and start my journey of healing. As God brought me through a series of divine connections, I became affiliated or acquainted with Operation Outcry and became the state leader. When I was asked to come and do the show, Faces of Abortion, the first time, I had called my pastor and said, they want me to come down, and he was so supportive and immediately said, "You need to bring this before the church body and let them know what you're doing." And I remember being very scared because it was the first time I had openly shared my story. And the response I got was phenomenal. They were so supportive. They financially supported me, emotionally and spiritually supported me to help bring me down here. And they've been that way ever since.
You just heard Kelly's story of how abortion affected her, of actually holding her baby in her hand after that abortion and calling the abortion facility for help, and all that she received was a callous answer. You may be thinking about abortion right now, and what we want you to do is to call our 24-hour helpline, where you will receive truth, you will receive helpful answers, and also a referral to a pregnancy care center that is around our nation. I know, Alan, when I was listening to Kelly's story and thinking of how that is the same story that we hear over and over again from the women of Operation Outcry, crying out for help and instead being lied to.
That's the response of the abortion industry, the abortionist in this case, and you would think that the sobbing would be an indication that the woman is conflicted about the decision. And Kelly didn't know what to do, and she wanted help, but she wasn't given alternatives. She wasn't given the assistance to go through with the pregnancy. Instead, she's lied to and told it's a blob of tissue. And then she found out the truth in a rather horrifying way that most women don't see because that truth is hidden from them. But it was the humanness of the child that shocked her and should shock all of us as this horrible procedure goes on.
Well, you know, at 10 weeks, Alan, the baby is completely formed in all respects. It has all of its organs. It has its own blood supply, its own heartbeat, its own fingerprints. The only thing added from 10 weeks on is nutrition.
And growth.
And growth, but I mean in maturity. I mean, you know, obviously the lungs have to mature and so forth, but they're there. And to say that it's a blob of tissue is really, to what we say in the law, to beg the question. You know, it's putting a gloss on things that's not true. I mean, you know, you're a blob of tissue, Al, so am I. I'm a big blob of tissue, but that's not all that I am. I'm a human being, and so are the babies.
You're a blob of tissue with purpose, with value.